He was an inspiration because he'd go see anybody in the world, and he'd go in and he'd pray for him, and like Ben said, you felt like he was just talking to God as he would begin to pray for people, and he addressed him as a friend, and he sounded so certain when he would pray for people. I mean, he would pray for you, and he said, "Now, Father, I'm believing," and he'd name off a verse, and then he'd say, and you, Jesus, bought and paid for my healing on that cross. And I was thinking about all the miracles he saw, tumors falling off of people, people in horrible prognosis, just getting up and was fine afterwards. And he had so much faith. But I watched this video recently that was talking about helping people do POAs. And they were partnering with a local church. And this pastor up there, she made a statement that seems really simple, but is profound when you think about it. Everybody that Jesus healed died. And that's a profound statement. We don't think about that. But they had their moment of healing, but then there came the time that they died. And I was thinking about that with Uncle Jerome. After all the healings he's seen, and he was in the middle of this whole thing. And I honestly, it's hard. You almost get your hopes up because he's been through several of these type situations, and he's always came through. But this time it was done. I was just thinking about that. There comes a time, no matter who you are, that it comes time to lay down this life on earth and meet Jesus face to face. And Paul put it that faith becomes sight. That the thing that we believed in Christ, and we've believed that we're paid, that our sins have been paid for, and that we've been made right with God. And then in that moment, it becomes sight. You'll see everything that you believed for. It says to be absent from the body, to be present with the Lord. And in that moment, you'll be there, and you'll see it. Faith will become sight. To join my dad, his parents, Robin, and it probably, exactly like Ben said, it's probably his most joyous day that he's had is today, as he joined them together. And he spends his first Sunday with the Lord. Exciting stuff. Anyways, I want to talk today about what's missing in your Christmas. Now, yesterday, we set up all this stuff here at the church. Got the beautiful Christmas decorations. Looks really nice. Ben's kids did an amazing job. They decorated this tree with us. Ben kept them on task. He'd say, "Hey, let's get that on the tree," and they were so excited too. They were just raring to go, and they wanted to make sure that tree looked pretty for y'all, and it does. I wish they were in here so I could brag on them, but you'll have to tell them that they really worked on this. It's another thing though in the Christmas season. Afterwards, Mom and I, she had to get something over in Fairview Heights. I said, "I'll ride along with you." And so we shot over to Fairview Heights. Have you been to Fairview Heights in the middle of Christmas season? Holy cow. Holy cow. There's cars everywhere. No one cares about things like the rules of the road, and they just turn from far lanes, and they're darting in and out, and everybody, and you go into stores and everybody's kind of back to back, and everybody's looking for that deal. And And you know how it goes. Every year you have the requests from your family. Little Johnny wants the rescue pups, great Tower of Justice. You know, I know that's the wrong name for them, and I can't remember what they are. Paw Patrol, a great Tower of Justice, where they all hang out and go and dispense, or maybe Susie wants something, you know, a new vanity mirror, and your 17-year-old daughter, she's been looking for this car, and you're not going to talk to a used car dealer so that because she's been driving Dad's old hand-me-down pickup, and there's so much stuff crying for your attention, let alone trying to make a Christmas dinner. It's all crying for your attention. And in the middle of that, you may hear something about Jesus. What's missing in our Christmas? We stay so busy during this holiday season. So busy. There's plays. There's church functions. I'm sorry we contributed to all that. I mean, we literally have something for the next 3 weeks. But there's all these things vying for your attention. Is that what it's about? Is that what it's about? I wanted to read some statistics to you. This came from the American Psychiatric Association. In thinking about the upcoming holiday season, adults are most likely worried about gifts, either affording or finding the gifts. A couple years ago, younger people were worried about being with their unvaccinated parents. There was that thing. There was that. Do you remember this? That was a thing. Are you, Mom, Dad, are you going to get vaccinated? No. I don't know if I want to come. If you're not going to be healthy, we can't be healthy. Especially if they had kids. They were worried about exposing their kids. Do you remember this? Across healthcare workers, where I work, at the hospital, it gets busy. And they're trying to have Christmas, and they're having to pull extra shifts because people are not going to be there. And there's a bunch of people at the hospital because there's things going around, and it fills up. And more nurses are needed than ever. And so they've got all this stuff going on in the hospitals. And sometimes parents, even parents, are worried about different things. Dad may be worried about getting the right gifts. Mom may be worried about colds and flus that are going around and trying to keep everybody healthy. And on top of it all, people feel anxious about their missing family members. I remember 13 years ago, we spent a Thanksgiving at the funeral director's. Thanksgivings never looked the same. Jerome and Carolyn spent a Thanksgiving at the funeral director's after Robin passed. And maybe your loved one didn't pass away close to Christmas or Thanksgiving, but that first holiday after they passed, it's hard. There's a lot going on. You have a lot of stress. So what I'm going to invite you to do is to take time and think about the real reason that we have Christmas. And I'm going to look at, for the next 3 weeks, I want to look at some different ways, some things that maybe we've forgotten about our Christmas. And so our first one today, we're going to have to look at some Old Testament scriptures. I'm going to lay a background for you, okay? And I want to read. We're going to start out in the very first book of the Bible, Genesis. And you all know the story. You got Adam and Eve, and they have access to all the trees in God's paradise. And it makes it sound like there was different things in all the trees. You know, you had pears and apples and all these things. But there was two special trees in that paradise. There was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which God says, don't eat of the fruit of that tree. And then there was the tree of everlasting life in the middle of this garden. And there came a point where a talking snake comes in the picture and gives all snakes a bad name, because he begins to talk to Eve. He says, doesn't it look good? Wow. You know, I bet if you eat that fruit, you could be just like God himself. Maybe that's what he's worried about. He starts planting doubts. He goes, why don't you reach out and touch that fruit? And he's like, I don't think we're supposed to. Oh, sure, just go ahead and touch it. Oh, you know what? That fruit looks great. Definitely in season. Well, then he's saying, wouldn't it be good to eat that fruit? Well, now he starts thinking, you know, and he does eat the fruit. Oh, best tasting fruit she's ever had. So what she do? She goes and takes it to Adam. She said, try this. Try this. And men think on their stomach anyway. So he said, sure, hand that over. You know, and so he's there. They're both chowing down, and then something happens. The name of the tree suddenly comes into play, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and Adam and Eve become aware. They become ashamed. They have to go and they have to put on clothes because they're worried that they're not dressed good enough to see God. They're worried because they've been running around naked all this time, and they just suddenly understand that maybe being naked is not the best way to think. And they hide from God. Because all this time they've been showing him their nudity. And I mean, if you think about the absurdity of that situation, you know, you kind of have to laugh, because it's like they've been worried about the person that created them seeing who they are. But anyways, so they put on clothes and they hide, and God comes to find them. He said, Adam, where are you at? I don't want you to see me. I'm nude. Did you know I was nude, God? Did you know? I always imagine that there's where God has that big sigh. But I know God knew, but I like to put that big sigh in there. Been eating at the tree again, haven't you? You've been eating the tree. Yeah, it was good, but hey, you know what? Eve did it. Eve gave it to me. I don't even know if I knew it was a tree. I don't know what you created here, God. And he begins to lay down punishments, because for the first time, man has disobeyed God. There was relationship, and then we have disobey. And he begins to lay down punishment. We all know that Adam and Eve had to be expelled from the garden, but he turns to the snake, and he proclaims against him. He proclaims, Genesis 3:15, and I will cause hostility between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He, which is the empirical Jesus, will strike your head, and you, the devil, will strike his heel. He gives a prophecy. The first prophecy that we have recorded, he gives to in this statement. He said, you're going to be a problem for man from now on. But there's going to come someone one day who's going to cut off your power. He's going to be able to cut off your head. He's going to be able to get rid of your influence. Jesus was the first. This is the first mention and the first promise to man that all this stuff that happened here at the garden was not going to be forever. That God's mercy would return to man. We move a little bit further into the book of Isaiah. Lots happened. We moved from Genesis, where man's kind of finding out who he is, mankind, to we've had civilizations rise up. We've we had the Jewish people in great favor with God come in and proclaim their land. And then they've fallen away. And in that time, there was a man named Isaiah, a prophet. And Isaiah, he lived 700 years before the birth of Christ. Genesis is said approximately 3,000 years before the birth of Christ. Isaiah is 700 years. 700 years, that's longer than our country has been here. Think about that. By about two and a half times. 700 years. And we come to the prophecy in Isaiah 9:6, and it says, wow, where did I get to talking too much. For a child is born to us, a son is given to us, the government will rest on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Isaiah is making a pretty bold proclamation here. He's saying there is someone coming. There is someone coming that's great. Our lives will not always be as bad as it is now here in the exile. There's a king coming, and he's going to change everything. And his anointed names is he's going to be the Wonderful Counselor. He's going to be an extension of God. He's the everlasting. And he's the Prince of Peace. He's going to bring peace. Peace. Remember we just talked about that last week, I believe? We talked about your peace. This is the Prince of it. This is the one who gives us peace. Will be born is what Isaiah is saying. Wow. 700 years before Christ was born, Isaiah starts naming his characteristics. And amazingly, Isaiah didn't just do it once. He did it twice. We're going to look at Isaiah 7:14. He says, all right then, the Lord himself will give you the sign. Look, the virgin will conceive a child. The virgin. He's even calling out that his mom is not going to have known a man and is going to have a child. And she'll give birth to this son, and we're going to call him Emmanuel, or God with us. In case you missed it in the other one, God will be with us. What a powerful name. It's not God over us, it's God with us. In the muck. When we go through when we go through all the things that man is going through, Jesus was there. He knew, he physically existed and dealt with all the things that we're going to exist with. Wow! God with us. If we look at that, you think about, I don't know if your children ever had an ant farm as a kid. So what the comparison is that the child holding the ant farm has become an ant in the ant farm. One of the ants who toil, who have to endure when things get shaken up, when tunnels collapse, when all those things. He became one with us. Think about that. Are you amazed yet? This is crazy stuff. You know, it's one thing to just hear all this, take it in, okay, it's a great story. But I think we fall into that trap sometimes of thinking of this as a story. And it's not. There's so many proofs that Jesus walked on this earth. And if he walked on this earth, well, then that means maybe the rest of this is true. There's so many proofs that the Bible was telling the truth. They use it to find archaeological sites. It's so accurate when they describe where things are that a lot of their history has been uncovered. In fact, more history than any other group in history because of its accuracy. And if all that's true, maybe some of these words are true. Interesting. I want to read one more. Micah. In Micah 5:2. But you, O Bethlehem, Ephrath, are only a small village among all the people of Judah. Yet a ruler of Israel, whose origins are in the distant past, what we've just been talking about, will come from you on my behalf. In case they missed all those other words, Micah reaffirms that the ruler is going to come from Bethlehem. So have you caught all this? So we have Bethlehem and a virgin that's been named that Jesus will come. They told you the where, they told you the who. And they told you who this kid is. That's a lot. I want to read this. Peter Stoner wrote in a book called Science Speaks. He applied the modern science of probability, took probability to just 8 of these prophecies. Some of the ones that we've read here, but he took 8 of them. And the chance that any man might have fulfilled all 8 prophecies is 1 in 10 to the 17th. That's 1 in 100 quadrillion. Stoner suggests that we take 10 to the 17th silver dollars, and if you lay them over you could lay them over the face of Texas, and it would cover all of the state 2 feet deep. Silver dollars 2 feet deep, all over the state, is what 1 in 100 quadrillion would be. If you had 100 quadrillion silver dollars, it would cover the state 2 feet deep. Now mark one of these silver dollars and stir the whole mass thoroughly, blindfold a man and tell him he can travel as far as he wishes, but he must pick up that one marked silver dollar. What chance would he have of getting the right one? And Stoner concludes, just the same chance that the prophets would have had of writing those 8 prophecies and having them come true in any one man, providing they wrote them in their own wisdom. 1 in 1 quadrillion. There's not even been that many people on the earth. 1 in 100 quadrillion. Wow. Think about that. Are you amazed? I want to talk about amazement and some of the things that we need to think about in this time. And the first thing is like I've been suggesting, we've lost the amazement of how crazy it is that Jesus came to this earth. We've lost the amazement of how it was prophesied hundreds of years in the past, and sometimes thousands. That's amazing. That's incredible. I want to look at the 3 reasons why we should be amazed. All right? Number 1, we should be amazed that God would step into his own creation. John 1:14 says that, so the Word became human, or flesh in the King James, and made his home among us. He was full of unfailing love and faithfulness, and we have seen his glory, the glory of the Father's one and only Son. You remember Emmanuel, God with us. John says, God with us. The one and only Son is with us. Unfailing love and faithfulness. John's writing this in hindsight. He wasn't writing it as it went, but he's thinking about who Jesus was. He was unfailing love and faithfulness when he was here. And he said, we've seen the glory. And It's the same as if it was the Father, God on earth. Wow. That's amazing. And we're celebrating that. And yet you don't hear that. We may see, we sing an Emmanuel song, don't we? But do we ever actually just kind of dwell on the fact that God was with man for a time on this earth, 33 years on this earth, he was with us. God was with us. Buddha wasn't with, well, he sort of was. I think there was a lot of things there, but I mean, but the other gods have never actually been with man. Number 2 of why we should be amazed is we should be amazed that Jesus entered the world as a nobody. Think about that. Luke 2:7, she gave birth to her firstborn son. She wrapped him snugly in strips of cloth and laid him in a manger because there was no lodging available for them. You know, and I've talked about this before, the strips of cloth were what they used to bind up the lambs, the sacrificial lambs, for the sacrifices that the priest would make, because it couldn't just be any lamb. It had to be a lamb without spot or blemish. So that means that it couldn't be a lamb that got tangled up in some barbed wire. I know they didn't have barbed wire, but I'm making points. It couldn't be a lamb that had a gimpy leg. It had to be a lamb without spot or blemish that was presented to the Lord. And so in this manger, which Bethlehem was a place where they raised these lambs, she found strips of linen to keep him warm, because they're out in the barn, and barns are drafty. And she wrapped him up tightly to keep him warm with the very strips they used to prevent the lambs from wandering off and getting hurt, or wandering off and getting under the feet of the other animals, so that they would just lay there until and not get hurt. It was in a barn. You know, I've been growing up, I don't know if you all were like this, but I didn't grow up on a farm. I didn't know that a manger was a feed trough. Mind blown when I heard that. I didn't realize it was a feed trough. I guess bad teaching. I don't know. But anyways. But it's a feed trough. And she had to lay him there because there was nowhere else to put him. She put him in a feed trough. And they couldn't, the king of creation couldn't even get a room in a hotel. Couldn't even find a place with a real bed. It had to be born out among the wilds, outside, exposed. That's what they could do. They could be born. They had to stay out there. Wow. Talk about being among us. He wasn't born in a palace. He was born in the lowest circumstances. And even more amazing is the only people that were there to witness this greatest of miracles was some shepherds from the nearby fields. The kings came later. They weren't there at the beginning like our beautiful manger scene here portrays that there's kings there, but they weren't there. They came later. And there's only some shepherds from a field. Doesn't say any townspeople came to witness this. Doesn't say anybody else. But shepherds who had to sleep out in the fields with their sheep came to witnessing. No hoopla, no fanfare. It's just them and a kid whose family couldn't even get him in a proper room. We should be amazed that God would think so much of us. He thinks so much of us. Let's look at Galatians 4. But when the right time came, God sent his son, born of a woman and subject to the law. God sent him to buy freedom for us who were slaves to the law so that he could adopt us as his very own children. God saw his creation moving further and further away. As part of his creation, created rules that nobody could keep, and was using those rules to lord over the rest of God's people. And their minds turn further and further from God, just as we do sometimes when we get frustrated with the laws of our country and the people who are called to enforce those laws. Not Justin, he's great. But sometimes we get frustrated, don't we? We because we don't, there's all these laws. Let's put it over in the IRS. We get frustrated, don't we? Tax time comes, and you're hoping to God that your accountant knows what they're doing, and you're not going to have to sit in an audit. Right? Have you ever seen tax code? It's multiple volumes. And you're just hoping you did it right. That's how they felt about the laws that the Pharisees had come up with. They had added all these laws to keep people in piety. And not only that, but they like to walk among the people and make comments. Like, maybe you need to offer a little bit more come sacrifice time. I think you're pretty far from where God is. They would walk among like the policemen, looking for people breaking laws. God said, that's not who I am. I never intended for this to be a so far away relationship where all you're worried about is these rules. I intended for us to always be close. And his son Jesus had to come fulfill all those rules that were originally made. Maybe not the ones that the Pharisees made, but the rules originally made. He had to fill all those rules. And then he had to die for us, because he was the Lamb without spot or blemish. God cared about us that much. He never wanted to be afar from us. He never wanted to be some dusty relic. He loved us so much that he gave his only son. I was watching Eli yesterday, and him and Kate were just so they're really cute kids. They're helping decorate. They were excited too. Didn't know where the beads went or anything, and we decided we didn't need beads. But there was a lively discussion about this, and just very cute. But I guarantee you that Ben would have a hard time if he thought he had to sacrifice Eli for any of you. I dare say he probably wouldn't do it. But God said, I'm willing to sacrifice that for my creation. Are you amazed? Are you amazed? Claire talked about the word terrible. And this is a part of that terrible thing. This is a part of the reverence that we have for God, because, and where it could almost be called terrible. His love was so fierce, he sent his son to die for you, to bring you back to him, to give you access to his throne, nay, to adopt you as joint heirs, as Paul puts it. Not only did he send his son, but he used his son and his death to be able to bring us into a relationship that we would be as king's children, able to go to the Father with our problems and ask him for a reprieve. He loves you. He loves you. We're going to celebrate that love right here. I've asked Karen, and she graciously, I just sprung this on her yet last night. I said, you know what would be great? to do at the end of this service, I want to do communion together. So we're going to come out here and we're going to do communion. I'm so thankful that she was able to help me with that. Would you step out here into the aisles with us? And let's celebrate this love that was paid for us. You want to play with that? Timmy, do you want to help pass? Would you like to help pass, please?